Welcome to the Raw Spotlight podcast, where we feature inspiring leaders in the B2B space and share their unique stories. Let's get started with the show.
Hi, welcome to the Raw Spotlight, where we explore leaders, entrepreneurship, and digital marketing. I am Emily Yao, co-founder of Ready at Work. Joined by me today is Victor, my business partner. In this series, we'll share insights on growing a business, the evolution of digital marketing, and key strategies for success. Today, we're diving into real-world examples, how digital marketing strategies help two local businesses grow. We'll break down the tactics, tools, and decisions that made a difference. So get comfortable, settle in, and get ready to be inspired. Before we start, I have a sponsor message. This episode is brought to you by Ready at Work, a website-first digital marketing agency dedicated to driving long-term growth for your business. At Ready at Work, we believe your website is the foundation of your digital presence. That is why we led with a proven 7-step website blueprint, a strategic process designed to deliver high-performing, lead-generating websites. If you want to hear a full breakdown, check out our dedicated episode on the 7-step website blueprint. Visit readyatwork.com to see how we can help your organization unlock its full digital potential. So again, today I'm joined by my business partner and co-founder, Victor Huynh. From our early days as a garage startup to becoming a leading website design company in Los Angeles, Victor has been instrumental in helping businesses grow through branding, digital strategy, custom website design in WordPress and Shopify. His expertise has guided our clients through the ever-changing digital landscape, delivering real results. So Victor, welcome back to the show. And yeah, let's dive into some successful client case studies together.
Yeah, thanks for having me again, and looking forward to talking to our audience as well.
Okay, so one of the first case study that we want to highlight is a local music school academy that is just in our neighborhood. They have 2 locations. So we helped them rebrand from the ground up very early on. And I want to say this is probably over 10 years ago.
Yeah. It is one of our older accounts, and older in a good way, as some of you that have been following us, Ready at Work has been around for now over 22 years. So 10 years is a good long run with a client. So definitely one of our great clients, favorite clients. And this client has been through different phases of Ready at Work growth, right? There was a time when we were doing a lot of logos because, Emily and I both, as co-founders, are classically trained graphic designers. Some of you may or may not know that, but we come from some really old school graphic design chops at Cal Poly Pomona. Typography and, colors, Pantones, all that stuff. We used to live and breathe that. So
yeah, we used to go to press checks in Pasadena.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So there was a time where we were doing a ton of logo design. We were like ranked number 1, like in Southern California for logo design, and we were getting a lot of inquiries. So back in the heyday, we were doing SEO for that, and it generated a ton of traffic for us. I think that's where we started with this client. We designed their logo. We did their website. I think we did the website more than once.
Yeah.
Through the years. And this was also when I think we already were doing some SEO, but it wasn't like a big portion of our offering yet. We were transitioning from like still some print 10 years ago into full digital.
Right.
And we did really work for them, right? In terms of local SEO. At some point within that process, we figured out that this client has a really, really good product in terms of a music school, and people that experience it, there's a really high closing rate. So they were offering like free lessons, which is pretty common within the industry. But we just knew that our goal, our true KPI, key performance indicator, is not to get them customers. Is really our job as marketers is to get them those free trial lessons, right? So we drill down really deep and really, really hard on getting them the free trial lessons to a point where, we were sending over the leads consistently. Like, hey, this week, this is how many people are signing up for free trial lessons. And client had an amazing, I think it was like something like 80%, 90% plus of conversion from free trial to actual students. So that was something that we figured out and has worked. As long as we kept that KPI going, the industry doesn't really change much. Yeah, there were some turbulent times going through COVID with in-person teaching, and we did some virtual stuff. But the main thing is that we kept pivoting, but focusing on that customer experience for both the students and their parents, because although they do teach adult music lessons, the driver of most music classes are still going to be students, right? And at the younger age, where their parents are, the decision makers. So understanding their customer really helped drive our strategy. The other piece that made them successful with us, because we get that question a lot, right? I wasn't sure if you guys only work on certain types of customer, like for our branding, we say B2B lead generation. And then some people know that, we work with Adobe. So they automatically assume, okay, well, I can't, I like radio artwork, but I can't really work with them. So the reason why this local business and the next case study we're going to talk about, they work with radio artworks is because they have a really high average order value, AOV, and a really high average lifetime value, right? Average customer lifetime value. So ALV. What does that mean? Each transaction is not going to be like $5, $8. So that's the average order value. And then the average lifetime value, meaning that the customers do come back repeatedly. Like if they're signing up on, weekly or monthly lessons in this case, and then how long they stay, that usually turns out to be a pretty significant dollar amount, right? So they're able to kind of absorb the time it takes to do all the proper marketing channels, right? Versus someone trying to sell $5 items, and for them to see that ROI, return on investment, it's going to take a much longer time. So for them, they might find it harder to swallow working with a professional agency, right? So those are some of the things that that work, but then also on a high level, what we think about when as a local business, what works with radio artwork. I can also drive down to a little bit of the branding that we did for this client, right? Because as local businesses, or even for some of the bigger, we have people that we talk to that are doing millions of dollars in sales. They don't really understand branding. They don't put a lot of effort into it, especially like these second generation, like, oh, my parents, they just kind of threw this logo together and it worked. They had a lot of networking and community presence to grow their business to scale. But they've never really thought about their company as a brand, right? And why does branding matter? We have to look at it from a digital lens. SEO, when we're talking about search engine optimization, when people are searching, there's branded keywords and unbranded keywords, meaning that people that already know who you are and start searching, and then people that are looking for generic, like, music classes near me or music classes for kids, right? Although it's nice from an SEO standpoint to rank for those unbranded keywords, when people type in your brand name and the service you offer, that conversion rate is going to be a lot higher, right? So that's why it's important to rank for them. But then at the same time, a lot of the other stuff kind of happens as hand in hand with what we do, right? Having a great product, doing community, especially if you're a local business, getting involved in the community, whether it's like through a chamber of commerce or events, even if you're dealing with kids, are you sponsoring PTAs? Are you getting involved, right? And then when people interact with your brand, like having a logo that is really well thought out, consistent branding, it's going to also create a particular vision of your brand and associate it with higher quality if your brand is a little bit more polished, right? Versus you're a startup that's kind of figuring things out and don't have systems in place, right? These things all happen really quickly in the back of people's minds psychologically when they're looking at your brand, looking at your website, and experiencing every touch point along the way before they even reach out to book a free lesson, right? What is their impression of the brand, right? So that's a big piece of how we think about local marketing, or just marketing in general. Like the brand piece is really, really important, right? It's hard to, it's not as tangible as traffics and clicks. So it's hard to quantify, but in a way, we know that it does convert a lot higher when there's a strong brand behind it. So it's something that you cannot just ignore and just go, okay, I'm just going to be focusing on advertising or SEO and hope people convert, right? And those numbers, and wonder why those numbers are not doing great when there's a disregard for brand.
Yeah, I do think branding is really important for any types of business. Maybe Victor, you can touch on for us, maybe a local business, what type of mistakes do they often make when building their first website?
Yeah, well, I wouldn't say mistake. I think my favorite quote is "You don't know what you don't know," right? So it's not like you're purposely going out making mistakes. It's really because you're ignorant or you're not
educated,
aware
right?
of what you need, right? A lot of people start with, oh, I need a website, or I need a logo, I need something, right? It starts from a general knowledge, but what do you do to kind of gather more, at least find the end of the yarn, if you will, the end of a spool of messy yarn, like where's that end piece, right? And that's what we try to provide. I think in the intro, Emily mentioned our 7-step process for web discovery. We call it our web blueprint, right? So that's aimed to say someone that's saying they understand they don't know what they don't know, and they're like, well, I need help understanding where do I start. So that's why we created that, right? So if a client comes to us and says, hey, I know I need a website, I know I need marketing to do something, right? I need customers, but where do I start? That's typically where we say, hey, here is our process, and we engage on a small project like that where we go through multiple steps of understanding your business, understanding your customers journey, what's that experience like, knowing some of your competitors and what they're doing, what they're not doing, right? Understanding where you stand if you already have a website, so there's a whole host of things, and that whole process is to deliver you kind of like an overview, a blueprint of what are some of the things you need to be thinking about, right? What are some of the risks involved? Like we deal with accessibility. In America, it's ADA, Americans with Disability Act. So the same laws that govern whether a door is wide enough or the toilet is accessible, same law applies to websites, right? Some people know about it, some people don't. So do people with impairments like visual or hearing impairments, are they able to access your website, right? How does Google look at my website? How does LLM, large language models that drive like AI searches, how do they look at websites? right? These are all things that we try to kind of cover, both educate and also understand that process
Hmm.
before then we even start thinking about, okay, so what should go on the website? You have to understand why we have the website and what are all the obstacles we need to
Hmm.
kind of navigate. And then from there, understand your customer. Like with this client we're talking about,
Hmm.
we know that as long as we give them those free lessons, that we're able to kind of convert. There's a lot of other things like we're ranking for. It's seasonal as well within the music industry, where a lot of kids, they have to take their MTech classes. It's very industry specific, right? And so we know that every year around a certain time of the year, there's going to be a huge rise in search traffic around these tests, right? These certification tests. And we kind of plan for it.
Hmm.
So we pre-rank them for certain keywords, knowing that there's going to be an influx and a drop off. We know that there are going to be peaks and valleys, like during summer, when people are on vacation, there's going to be a slowdown. When school picks up, there's going to be, an uptick. So it's very seasonal, but after a while, you kind of get the hang of things, and you have to pre-plan for all these with the client.
Right, right. But yeah, as long as there's sometimes clients look at month over month and they freak out when there's a decline. But the other side of it is you have to also look at it from a year over year, with these seasonalities in mind. Because if you have a big event, you're not going to beat the previous month if there is a big event in the previous month. So you have to look at what happened last year at the same time so that you have a year over year comparison.
Right, right, right.
Yeah.
And one thing I'm just making an observation, right? Because local businesses, not to say that they're smaller, but for the most part, they're small business, and typically their revenue range is probably like around the $1 million mark. Maybe a little bit above that. Um, versus like some of our other mid-sized clients that might be 5, 10 million or 50 million, right? The biggest difference is that a lot of these local business, their owners are still very, very involved in every aspect of what we call delivery of the product and service.
Hmm.
So we know that their resources are a little bit more slim. They
Hmm.
usually don't have a team of marketing people that we work with. We either work with the client, the owners directly, or more often their operations person
Right,
that
right.
also has to wear that marketing hat. You see the marketing hat? Yeah. Okay. So we don't have the luxury of like a weekly meet or a bi-weekly meet. We're lucky to get their time on a monthly basis if possible, right? Some of them don't even want to talk to us because like, guys, I don't have time, right?
Right,
They rely on us.
right.
So usually at the beginning part, we try our best to kind of understand their business so that we can kind of act and make good decisions on their behalf. And after understanding, their business model, their customer journey, pros and cons, right? We typically have more like a email or text message type of communication on things that are like urgent, like you would expect in a small but fast-paced environment.
Hmm.
Or like, hey, is this okay? Is this not okay? Right? Confirm and move on. So it's just a more like an observation. Nothing wrong or right about that. It's just typically that's what we experience and that's what we try to kind of compensate for. But
Right.
obviously, as a business, you want to be able to also work on the business, right? To be able to kind of pull yourself out as much. That's the end goal, at least the way I see it, right? Is to be able to kind of build a business and build a team that can kind of run things and not be involved in every little aspect of running the business as a business owner.
Right, right. Maybe one last main item to cover with this music academy. Through our monthly meetings, Victor, we're able to also discover that they actually have a second audience that they're trying to connect with. And we saw that as an opportunity to lead gen in that aspect. Yeah, you want to touch on that a little bit?
Yeah, for sure. And it's very common for almost all businesses to have more than one target audience,
Hmm.
right? It's I think it's too ideal to say I only have one ideal customer. So for a music academy, they can only bring on as many clients or students as they have teachers available,
Right.
right? So also using their marketing as a tool, right? Instead of just dumping everything on Indeed or some other forum like that. Their branding, their website, their SEO also serves to attract and create a message that, hey, this is a great place to work, to kind of sell their culture, sell their process, and attract talent, right? So that's the other audience, other than people looking for free lessons, right? And the other really important piece is really recruiting and finding talent to be able to teach at their level, right? They're trying to bring obviously at the level that they expect.
Right.
So again, very very common that we identify multiple, and some clients have like 5-6 target audiences, right?
Hmm.
So it's not uncommon. Yeah, that's a really good one.
Yeah, so we were able to recognize that opportunity and was able to build a second channel for lead gen for the teachers. So if there's any teachers interested, then there's a pipeline of applicants or people that are seeking to this music school to line up to become a potential teacher.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's switch gears. Let's
Yeah.
talk about another local business, but this one is a dental office.
Yeah.
Um, with this particular one that we're covering, they needed a digital solution fast, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this one, although is hasn't been with us for 10 years, has been with us for a decent amount of time as well.
Hmm.
And again, starting off with a website and then coming back and saying, hey, guys, I'm interested in marketing. I do want to kind of grow, and everything was very ambitious, obviously at the time. Um, and what we're realizing is that this client says their local business, very typical, like what we're talking about, average order value, average lifetime value has to be high enough
Hmm.
for dentistry. Definitely is those, some people get loyal to their dentist, though.
Hmm.
It's hard to find a good one. Once they find it, they usually stay around for a
Right.
while. And also, if they're looking to get certain procedures done, those can be pretty high ticket, whether it's out of pocket or through insurance, right?
Hmm.
So definitely that works for them. The other thing is that we wanted to measure, like, what's the quickest ROI for them, at least so that I can cover whatever I'm paying radio hour, right? And so aside from building the website, the next logical thing is paid media, paid ads,
Hmm.
right? Um, and we're doing we did a lot of testing, both on Meta and on Google,
Hmm.
right? To kind of drive patients through the pipeline and over to fill their seats.
Hmm.
This client has multiple doctors and multiple specialties, right? Sometimes you'll have certain offices that only do pediatric or
Right.
only do orthodontics, right? So they cover a wide range, which kind of goes back to what we were saying earlier, where you have multiple target audiences,
Hmm.
right? You have the elderly with certain typical procedures, and you have pediatric, so the whole gamut of them.
Hmm.
Um, so why advertising versus SEO? Not that we didn't do SEO, we just didn't put as much of our resources towards it, right? It's still a holistic approach, right? We want, like we talked about branding, right? It's really important. So we want to look at digital marketing more holistically. And the reason why we ran with ads is because ads are easier to quantify, right? They drive results quicker. You should have a understanding of whether or not you're generating any leads at all in a very short amount of time. And when I say short, I would say like 1 to 2 months. You should start seeing like actual people clicking and becoming customers. Now, does that mean it pays for everything? It depends, but most likely not, right? You have to set a certain expectation versus with SEO, right? To gain real tractions, if you talk about to most SEO people, no one's going to guarantee that, hey, you're going to start ranking on the first month, right? In the best case scenario, you're looking at 3 to 4 months, right? And a very average scenario, looking at 6 months for you to start ranking for ideal keywords. Right. And a lot of it also comes down to your sales process, like what happens once the lead comes in. If you're not responsive, that impacts it, right? All these other things. One thing we did for this client is, because it's so fast paced, if I have a toothache, I need to get serviced right away. Right? I can't sit around like if versus a music academy, like I can wait a couple of days. I don't need to get my kids right in, right? And in fact, I might be planning ahead 3 months.
Right. They might be planning for the summer break or spring break. Right?
Correct. So the nature of the business is very different. So we need to take that into consideration as well, right? So being very fast paced, we were able to integrate like call tracking, for example, and make sure that it's HIPAA compliant. When a customer calls, right, from a certain number, we're able to track, hey, it's coming from this source, Google Ads, right, or Meta Ads. And when their staff picks up, there's something we call a whisper that says Google Ads, right, in a soft voice. So the operator knows, okay, this is a lead from someone that came in from Google Ads, and they're able to kind of quantify that. Like, hey, I spent this money and it came in, and I'm able to hear, right? The fact that they're able to hear where the ads are going to come from is really valuable too. And then from there, we're able to kind of trace back and go, okay, this many leads came here. And then we're able to get feedback from the client. Like, hey, how are the leads? What's the quality like? Do we need to make any adjustments? Are you getting the right proportions of leads? Like, are you, I know we're pushing hard on pediatric this month or this quarter, right? Is that number changing? And something to kind of mention, this client is very forward thinking as a business, where they understand the value of marketing. We went through a call not too long ago, and we're in May of 2025, right? Just in case this becomes an old video one day, but the tariffs have been hit a lot of people, right? And like, well, it's a dental practice. You're a service based. How are you impacted by the tariffs? Well, something a lot of people don't realize is that majority of medical supplies is actually coming out of Asia and China specifically, that was hit particularly hard. And they were looking to cut where they're spending, right? Hey, insurance or all the extra layers of insurance I had, I'm just going to go down to bare minimum, right? What are some of the things that I can use less of, or where can I save? But in terms of marketing, although we're not generating like a ton of ROI because the amount of time we've spent on it, they understand that these things take time, and there's a possibility that, maybe even though we didn't grow, because we're doing marketing, we didn't shrink as much as we anticipated.
Yep.
And that's for sure the case on other clients that we work with,
right?
Because we take it very seriously on our customer success. Like, there's another, and I'm going to segue a little bit, to kind of prove this point. There's another client that we do, online sales for. We don't do a lot of it, but we're like, our team was freaking out, like, oh my God, we set some really crazy goals and we're not hitting them. And we were talking to the client, and surprisingly, they were, very upbeat and very happy. And I was like, what's going on? And then we had a conversation. I go, well, yeah, you guys are, helping us with the retail division, but our wholesale division got decimated.
Right.
Like all the retail sales, we sell in Costco, we sell in all these other big box stores. They were down, and we were the same amount of sales as last year, right? With the profit margins, obviously. So they were super happy that they didn't grow while everyone else and their entire other departments were like getting crushed because we weren't involved in the B2B side of things. So I think it's a similar situation here with this client. It's like, yeah, like, and I'm grateful that they're able to understand that, hey, without doing the marketing, we might be in a much worse position than if we were to cut it, right? So there's a little bit of that, you need to build trust with the clients to be able to kind of justify and quantify that. But I truly believe, when the market's down or when there's a slowdown, for whatever reason, there's always going to be ups and downs, right? When everyone's pulling back, that's when you really, when it makes sense to invest and market and do things, right? Obviously, you have to have a good product and service. But if you do, and when everyone's kind of pulling back, that's when you buy media for much cheaper, right? Because everyone's pulling back, right? If everyone's optimistic and spending money, you're competing and you're bidding against them, right? When the market's slow, there's I call it musical chairs. When there's a big shift in the marketplace, right? Where do you find opportunity to upseat your competitors or the front runners, right? Is those people that are investing and kind of pushing hard when everyone is scared. Obviously, you have to balance it without, you have to make it through. But if you just sit and wait, it's not really going to be helpful. Yeah, you're just waiting and seeing, right? So being very strategic of when to spend and how to spend. And that's a difference when we work with our clients. It's not like let's check the box. We're doing SEO, we're done, right? We actually have these open dialogues with our clients to understand, okay, so what's impacting your business? What can we do? It was very evident through COVID, right? Or the recent tariff craziness. What is going on and how do we need to pivot within your marketing strategy? What are trending keywords? What are trending topics, newsletters, things like that, right?
Right. Like earlier you mentioned for the music school client during COVID, you can't do in-person lessons. So we quickly added the client quickly added a service to do online lessons. And as their digital marketing agency, we identify that and, hey, let's have a landing page so that you can rank for those keywords, not just in your local area. Because now you're doing this as an online course. You can also rank, pretty much anywhere. So we reacted to the situation and be able to take it as an opportunity to gain more business for them. Yeah.
Having someone on your team that understands digital marketing is really valuable, especially in times of crisis for a business.
Absolutely.
Right. You're not just by yourself, at least when it comes to marketing, right? There are other things. I mean, we have pretty open conversations with our clients and they tell us, about their business and some of their struggles. And we try our best, like, okay, within our lane, what are things that we could bring to the table to kind of help get over this stressful situation or stressful time in the market, right? Just to kind of reassure and make sure that they have someone on their team.
Yeah. Victor, two last questions for me. How can you explain the difference between local SEO versus traditional SEO?
Yes. And that's a question we get asked a lot, right? Well, what is that difference? And so sometimes for some people, it's very self-explanatory, local SEO, meaning that you're ranking for keywords that are very specific to a geographic location, right? Pasadena, Arcadia, Glendale, certain keywords are associated with a location, and also Google's perspective of that as well. It's not just those cities, but if you're able to kind of let Google know that, hey, you're ranking in this geographic area, then you would start ranking for Google Maps positions, right? You would rank for Google local business, right? And a lot of these other what we call citations, and that includes Yelp, obviously a big driver in this local search, right? So it's all part of the local SEO is to make sure that those get ranked, that Google recognizes you as a local business, and so people within a certain area, when people are doing searches, that your business profile actually shows up, right? Versus a traditional non-local SEO, what you're trying to do is not only get those local searches, but also you're able to service people typically statewide or nationally, right? And more generic terms. And that also kind of encompasses into your web experience, right? When people come and they realize that, oh, well, I'm in New York and this company in California can also service me. Their value proposition aligns with what I'm looking for, and I don't really need a local business for this type of product or service, right? So, and you don't want, especially when it comes to advertising, you don't want to waste money on someone that can never do business with you because of geographic location, like a music school, right? Unless it's online. So what our music client and dental practice, right? They really shine when people are within a 10-mile, 20-mile radius, right? You really have to have a really strong value proposition to get people to come 50 miles to get their teeth checked, right? Or for music lessons, it's going to be, you have to really have a much stronger draw than just being a local business. But typically you want to focus on those, local searches and local directories, local citations, and make sure that your messaging on your website is very clear, right? You don't want people to click on and go, well, where is this place? And I mean, we've seen websites that are local businesses where you don't even know where they are located. You have to actually click around and
to find their address. Yeah.
Right. They hide it. They make it hard for customers to figure out that they're a local business and where they're located. Right. So I would say those are the biggest differences.
Okay. All right. So last question before we wrap up. What is one digital marketing strategy that every local business should consider implementing this year?
One local strategy, Google reviews, right? I know it's not as sexy or at first thing you think about. A lot of people as a local business, they think Yelp right away. Because Yelp does a pretty good job, right? Yeah. But I think people underestimate the power of Google, right? When it comes to reviews. So getting those Google reviews are going to be super valuable for traffic, for customers, right? Even though you personally might not be reading those Google reviews, people are. And more importantly, Google is.
Yes.
Right? That's the big one, right? That people don't think about. I don't, and that's the big gap. Like for the most part, as a consumer, I think most people can relate to this. I read Yelp reviews and I read Amazon reviews. Those are the two big ones that I read in terms of reviews. I tend not to pay attention too much to Google reviews. But because Google, especially now with AI, is reading through people's experiences and they're able to classify sentiment. Is this a positive review? Is this a negative review? And Google would now start prioritizing, like, should I show this business because it has a really negative customer experience? I don't want to feature it, right? So that's a big one. We help a lot of clients with that strategy as well. Obviously, there's only so much we can do from a physical standpoint. We can't go out there and kind of force people to write reviews. And obviously we don't condone fake reviews. Right. But what are things that we can do on our end to make it easier for them to get reviews? Those are things we kind of help with. So even if you're not a client of Ready Work, if you're a local business, make sure you ask for Google reviews, right? Aside from Yelp and everything else that you're doing. do that.
For both of these clients that we were sharing earlier, the dentistry and the music school, we actually helped them with recommending a QR code, at their locations at the reception desk. And as whether it be the patient from a dental office or students, parents waiting for their kids during a lesson, have a QR code and just ask for that review. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And you'll be surprised how many people will actually do it for you. Yeah.
Yeah. Or ask. You don't ask, you don't get, right?
Right. Exactly.
Just ask. Get those Google reviews. That's going to be the biggest driver. And if you need help, let us know, right? We'll definitely be happy to help.
Yeah. Okay, well, that's a wrap for today's episode of the Raw Spotlight. We hope that these case studies gave you real-world insights into how branding, web development, SEO, and paid media can drive results for your local business. If you found today's conversation valuable, don't forget to subscribe, leave us a review, and share this episode with someone who might benefit from this. And Victor, remind our listeners where they can connect with you.
You can connect with me on Instagram, Facebook, but most importantly, LinkedIn professionally. I am very picky about who I allow as friends as LinkedIn. So make sure if you're reaching out to me, say, hey, I heard you on the Raw Spotlight and you invited me to connect, right? Mm-hmm. So make sure you mention that, or else, I'm going to put it into my spam box.
Okay, great. Well, until next time, I am Emily Au, and this is the Raw Spotlight. Thank you so much for tuning in. And until next time, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Raw Spotlight podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.